Like, what are your favorite tips for someone if they're struggling with infertility?
Yeah, I always start with like the mind-body area because I feel like that yields the fastest and the biggest results. Literally, I had a patient who she was 36 when they came to me. They had been trying for a year. At 19, she was told she'd never get pregnant because she had PCOS. Wow. So there's this like fear of abandonment that's getting triggered daily.
All the time. Yeah.
So we went back to that original memory and did some processing around that. Even before I got her labs back, they literally were pregnant her next ovulation.
Oh, it's amazing.
You're tuned in to the Dr. Kinney Show, and I'm your host, Dr. Erin Kinney, a naturopathic doctor and speaker dedicated to unraveling the mysteries of your body and guiding you back into balance. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Dr. Kinney Show. This week I have joining me Dr. Katherine Zagone, who is a naturopathic doctor and expert in fertility. She's also the co-founder of a company called Clockwize, which we're going to learn about today. She and I met at a conference in September and got along really well. So I'm really excited to have you on the show today, Katherine. It's great to see you again.
You too, Dr. Kinney. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So maybe we can start by having you share your journey into naturopathic medicine and more specifically your journey into specializing in fertility. And I would love to hear the founding story of Clockwize as well.
Absolutely. My pleasure. So as far as naturopathic medicine, I joke that I was born into it. I was born at home, breastfed till I was 4, which was, unique in the 80s in Chicago.
Yeah.
To say the least. And growing up, my mom's solution to any ailment was probiotics and vitamin C. And
those are good solutions.
Totally.
She was kind of on it.
Yeah, for sure. And then when I was in high school, she was diagnosed with chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, a whole host of, especially at that time, there were no clear etiologies. Nobody knew like what caused that or what to do with it. So conventional medicine put her on steroids and methotrexate, chemotherapeutics. And she was even having like steroid injections into her eyes because the iritis flares from the autoimmune was so bad.
Yeah.
To the point, and she was sick to the point she was basically bedridden for about 6 months of my sophomore year of high school. And she's like, she had gone the conventional route because she's like, well, this is what it's for when you're really, really sick. Not realizing the paradigm shift that needed to happen there. And eventually she was like, okay, yeah, this is not working. And if I keep going down this path, I'm going to die. So she found actually a chiropractor, but who did supplements and lifestyle medicine.
Cool.
And and my dad would drive her twice a week to see him for all sorts of different visits with him. And within 6 months, she was 80% better.
Wow. So cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So
that's always the story, right? Like you're like, oh, they got so much better. Who would
totally. Well, and like today, I joke that she's like 98% better still, unless she has too much sugar, too much wine, or too much mother-in-law. So
that's great.
Yeah. So I got to witness that and was like, okay, I absolutely need to go into natural medicine of some sort, and did a little exploration of like, do I want to be an MD, a DO, a DC, an ND? And when I found naturopathic medicine, I was like, oh no, this is the thing. Like this is all the things.
It's all the things in one. You're like, oh, I get all the modalities. I get to learn about them all. It's going to kill me while I go to school for it, but I'm going to get to learn about them all.
Exactly. So then while I was, I realized, I knew that's what I wanted to do while I was doing my undergrad. And in my undergrad, I lived with my aunt and uncle who were in the middle of their like 7-year infertility journey.
Oh, wow.
And so I got to witness like the pain and the suffering and like, if a cycle doesn't work and whatnot. And going in with this mindset of like, well, there's gotta be like what's happening here? Like there's gotta be something natural we could be doing. Right. And they had tried a lot of things. And I'm happy to say they have 3 beautiful girls today.
Oh, that's amazing.
But so when I started naturopathic medical school, it was really like going in with a lens of like, so what is fertility and how do we cultivate that in the body? And ultimately coming to the conclusion that fertility is a byproduct of health.
Yeah.
And that there's so many things that go into health that conventional medical doctors and conventional reproductive endocrinologists and OB-GYNs don't even acknowledge exists.
Mm-hmm.
And so have had like this fertility lens, even going through school and beyond. And so really was focusing on women's health and fertility in my practice and seeing very good results. Like not everybody gets a miracle, but, I've seen patients where like one of my couples, they had a failed round of IVF at 36, failed round of IVF at 40, came to me at 42, and theoretically we'd be thinking, okay, well, she's, 6 years older than the first one that didn't work. Like,
yeah.
And
why would we think it would work? Yeah.
Totally. And they got 9 grade A embryos after working with me.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
So, yeah. And I've seen, couples who had multiple miscarriages get pregnant naturally and have healthy babies. I've seen couples, again, multiple rounds of IVF get pregnant naturally with healthy babies. And so, I'm seeing this in my practice. And a couple years ago, I was introduced to this biological age test. And I was like, oh, interesting. Like, I wonder if this is related to fertility. Like, theoretically, like you and I are probably like, of course, right?
Yeah, of course. It's
it's a measure of cellular health. Cellular health it directly impacts fertility and all of our health. And I started running it on some of my patients and tracking what was happening with them. And then I also was like, you know what? I'm going to do the test on myself. I'm like mid-30s, single in LA, wanting babies. Like, let's just see what happens here. And I was convinced I was going to come back at 28. Like, literally, I'm like chanting like 28, 28, 28 while I'm doing my little like finger prick blood spot card. Well, I came back 4 years older than I was. And like literally had
what?
like total meltdown. And now I'm like, okay, so I need to now solve this for myself and for women everywhere. Like, let's just do this.
Yeah.
And at the time, I think there were only like 2 or 3 published papers that even showed it was possible to rewind the biological clock. So I went into those papers and was like, okay, what protocol can I create for myself? I'm like, I'm not going to put myself on metformin. I'm not going to put myself on, rapamycin, all these things that are, coming out right now. But what are those mechanisms that I can
work on,
enhance in my own? Yeah. What am I not doing? What do I need to do better? So I put myself on a protocol, retested 8 weeks later, and managed to rewind my biological clock by a full 2 years and 8 weeks.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And since then, so on my 35th birthday, I came back at 31 3/4. So I went from 4 years older to almost 4 years younger in about a year and a half.
Wow. I remember you telling me that story, and it's still just as amazing. Like, wow, that's really cool. I mean, what I love about naturopathic medicine is obviously I've been doing this for 12 years or whatever. And I still have these like, wow, that worked. Wow.
I know.
I'm still constantly like in the state of wow all the time. I can't believe you just made that one diet change and that, wow. Like, I'm always just amazed. I'm amazed at the body and how when you give it what it needs and take away what it doesn't need, it performs for you. You just have to figure out, and our job is to figure out like, well, what are the things that are in there that shouldn't be in there? And what are the things that are missing that we need to give it?
Yep. Yeah. Simple, but so profound.
Yes. Yes.
And in all lifestyles, like I said, like it was diet. I did some fasting, like really got tight on my exercise because I, wasn't super consistent, handled some stressors that needed to be handled anyway.
Yeah.
Did do some supplementation. And then toxin wise, I've always been good on the avoidance. I didn't do any like detox necessarily, but I definitely was like more conscious of like, okay, I'm not going to go get that iced coffee in that plastic cup that maybe I would get, occasionally.
Yeah. But you might not have been someone who necessarily needed a detox. It would probably that would depend on the person. If you're someone who's had a higher level of exposure, that might be more important for for their protocol.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit more about Clockwize how did that like get born out of this experience you had?
Yeah. So after having this experience with that biological age test, I was like, women everywhere need to, 1, be able to know where they are on the biological clock, and 2, need to know what they can do to rewind it so that they can have healthy babies on their timeline.
Yeah.
And so on the business side, I recruited my best friend who has an amazing background in operations and hospitality. And I'm like, we need to bring this to the women of the world. And she's like, yes, we do.
Yes, bring it.
Yeah. So she came on board, and it's been a beautiful journey on the business side. And then on the clinical side, getting to see these women get results, both in like seeing where they are on the biological clock, which interesting fact of all the women who've tested with us so far, 90% come back older.
So
and that could be 1 year older or 10 years older.
Yeah.
We've had a few come back 10 years older.
Wow.
And the first thing we have in the report is like, this is reversible.
Yeah.
And what's funny is a lot of the women don't actually read the report. They just email us.
They're like,
they just like email us freaking out. Totally. Or like I get text messages. Like if we've had friends who've done it and are like, I don't feel 10 years older. And I'm like, well, that's why we do the test. Like it's a blind spot. It's how old your cells are, not how old you feel.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that go into it. Like I just had a friend and a patient who didn't know, well, she was pregnant. She had a miscarriage, thought she was done with the miscarriage, did her test. And then realized that she had actually been pregnant with twins and was still going through like a second miscarriage. So immense stress.
Wow.
Like probably the most stress she's ever had in her life. And we now know that pregnancy temporarily accelerates the biological clock, but then there's like a compensatory rewind that happens in the postpartum period, which is really cool. The female body is just
interesting.
So amazing.
So like the biological clock will actually, you'll get a little bit younger in that postpartum time?
Well, I think it just corrects.
A drop. Oh, got it. Corrects. I gotcha.
It doesn't appear that there's like a net rewind.
I gotcha. Okay.
Although I'm definitely committed to figuring out how to make that happen.
Oh yeah. That would be get younger after having your babies.
Yes, exactly.
For your new slogan.
Yeah, I like it. I'm going to write that one down. So, but for her, like she came back 10 years older and she's like, what the heck? And then after I talked through like the stressor component and the pregnancy component, she's like, okay, that makes a lot more sense. And what's interesting is, so like our test has 3 components. We have the biological age in this moment. So how old your cells are in this moment. So for her, she came back at like almost 50.
Wow.
Which is terrifying. Like if you're trying to get pregnant. Maybe for other people too, who knows? I'm all for healthy aging. And then the second component is this marker called the Dunedin pace. And it's like an aging speedometer. So it's how fast your cells are aging in this moment. And what's cool is that even when people come back older, I would say definitely more than half of our clientele come back that they're in this moment, their cells are aging slower than time. Yes. So when I see that, what that means is that there's been some cumulative acceleration over their lifetime. So, that could have been, a lot of travel, a lot of partying, not good diet for a couple of months. Like there's a lot of things that go into that.
Yeah.
But when that pace algorithm comes back, when the speedometer comes back slower, it tells me, okay, whatever you were doing like in that moment that you took the test, that day or a couple of days around, is working for you.
Oh, so interesting.
So yeah, because we want that number to be slower than or lower than 1, which means you're aging slower than time.
Cool.
So if they were to change nothing, then it's just a matter of time before the years start falling off the clock. However, with the protocol that we include with the results, it gives you some things to start right away that can actually slow that down even more so that the years come off faster.
So interesting. So whatever you're doing at the moment when you do this test, like that, it's giving you data on like, oh, this is working or this isn't working.
Yep.
That's very cool. So I would imagine it's probably useful to use this, like if you do a lifestyle change, do it a month later, right? And then see what that number, do you have people do that? Do they test more than once?
So we recommend a 3-month retest.
Got it. A 3-month retest. Okay. So make the changes, test after 3 months.
Yeah. So that the initial or that middle number, that pace algorithm, that speedometer, you will see a change in a month. You'll see a change in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But I like to do 3 months because at biological age, I like to see a change there.
Change in that. Yes.
That's so hopeful for people.
Yes. And that's so great for the mind. Yeah. To understand like what I'm doing is actually working.
Totally. And then the mind body component is so important to this as well.
Important.
Not just from like the handling stress part, that's important, but also like, as you probably know, like the body is a faithful puppy dog to the mind, and the cells listen to everything we tell it, conscious or unconscious.
Yes.
So
if you're telling your body, hey, what I'm doing is working, your body's like, oh, what I'm doing is working. This is great. I'm getting better. Like it listens.
Totally. Or like my personal mantra is like every molecule of my being vibrates with the highest expression of health and vitality.
Oh, I love that.
You can steal it.
I'm going to steal that one. Let's energetically vibrate that into this episode. Yes. Everyone who's listening, that's what you're getting. Totally.
Or even like something as simple as like every day I get younger, or every day I'm healthy. It can be whatever resonates with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's even studies showing that like, belief affects the physiology.
Oh yeah. I just a couple episodes, like I had a gal on here and we were talking about the myelination process. And so when you have a thought, that first thought, you create a pathway. And then every time you recreate the thought, so if you're writing something down, or you have a mantra, that will myelinate something. And every time you myelinate something, you speed up the thought process. And if the thought is sped up, it will work a lot better at, telling the body to follow suit. So the practice of a mantra is scientifically shown to actually change things cellularly in the body.
Amazing. Yes.
Yeah.
So then I'll continue. The third portion of our test is actually a toxin panel, because toxins are so important, or eliminating toxins that get them out of the body are so important for healthy reproduction, whether it's conceiving naturally, using egg freezing or IVF, or especially setting your baby up for the rest of their life, because everything that mom and dad eat, drink, breathe, touch, think, and feel 4 months before conception is being written into the epigenetics that are getting passed down to that egg and sperm.
Yeah.
So it's not just about like, can we get pregnant easily? Can we get pregnant later? It's really about, can we set our child up for the healthiest life possible?
Yeah.
And so like with the toxins, we know they're, and everything's cited in our report, but like certain toxins we know decrease your success with IVF or decrease the yield on an egg freezing round. But we also know like certain things affect cognitive function in 7-year-old boys when dad was exposed before conception, like crazy stuff like this.
So crazy. Yeah. That's so great that you have that as a part of the test profile as well. So you're just getting so much useful information to help you move forward.
Totally. And it what's like, I don't like to run a test if it's not going to change what I'm going to recommend to somebody.
Yes.
And so what I love about this is like, it's definitely altered timelines for both my patients and for some of our, non-patient clientele of like, oh, I came back older and with tons of toxins. Research wise, we know that when a woman comes back with her biological age older than her chronological age, even if she's 20s or early 30s, that yields poorer results on egg freezing and IVF. So let's give it 3 months before you go spend $20,000 and make sure we're giving you the best chance at getting the best result.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is probably game changing. So people can order the test on their own, or they have a doctor order it?
You can order it right online. So it's right to the house. Super cute little box.
So look at the box. You can see it's super cute.
It's a quick finger prick at home. So you just do there's a video, instructions, little lancet, a couple drops of blood on a card. Put it in the prepaid envelope, ship it back to the lab, and then you get an email report with it's like 27 pages. It's got the 3 chunks that I described with what your results are.
Yep.
A nice little encouraging letter if you choose to read it. Please read it.
Please read the letter. This is you can get better.
Yeah. And then the FAST framework, which are all the different things, like a little bit for each category of what you can start doing right now to start rewinding the biological clock. So food, fasting, fitness, associated conditions, which is things like blood sugar dysregulation and MTHFR mutation, stuff like that. S's are stress, sleep, and supplementation, and T's are toxins and trauma.
Awesome. So you get all this data. I would highly recommend, I'm big on this on the show, make sure you have somebody who's helping walk you through it. I'm sure you can do it on your own, but this is a process where it's nice to have support. I mean, any health journey process, but I think get the test results and then make sure you bring it to your doctor or whoever you're working with so they can help you along the process.
Definitely. Yeah. Especially with things like the supplementation.
Yes.
And what's interesting with like both the food and the fasting is like it's like, I don't give a protocol because there's not a protocol to give. Like, it is very individualized. And I have patients who are vegan and I have patients who are maybe not carnivore, but paleo.
Yeah.
And there are modifications for both. But it really is about like finding what's best for your body, right? Like what's going to be the thing that's going to help your body reverse your biological age. Exactly. And like, even if it's just like that one thing, like your high yield thing, just making that one change might make the biggest difference.
Yeah. Yeah. So cool. So how about in your practice? Do you work with people virtually?
I do.
Awesome. So if people want to find you, where can they find you?
That's a great question. So currently I would say we're in the transition, we're rebranding.
Oh, cool.
So I would say a direct email to drzagone@gmail.com would be the best way to get in contact with me right now.
Awesome. And are you taking new patients?
I am.
You are.
But I don't have
hesitation, as most of us in this field are. I am, but it might be 6 months from now. Yeah.
I do have a little bit of a waiting list right now. So yeah.
I think that's kind of the going theme. It's been a rough few years for most of us and just being a human. So a lot of us are going through stuff. So get on wait lists. A lot of my listeners are definitely, they like to work with people, and they, if you're going through an infertility journey, she's clearly very good at what she does. So get on her wait list if you're interested.
Thank you. And or get the test and get started. Like at least find out where you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is great.
And we are trying to figure out how, because part of the reason for creating this is like, I can only see so many people a day and a week, and a month and a year, and like, how do we help more women? How do we help more couples? And so being able to have the test at home and at least have some things to get started with. And then we are working towards doing like a digital course.
Oh, great.
And doing a live cohort. So we'll be able to help, a lot more people at a time.
Yeah. Super cool. So what are your favorite, like, other than, someone does the test, like, what are your favorite tips for someone if they're struggling with infertility? What would you just be like your advice for someone? Mentally, emotionally, what's your favorite thing?
I always start with like the mind body area, because I feel like that yields the fastest and the biggest results, and the quickest. Like, literally, I had a patient who, she was 36 when they came to me. They had been trying for a year. At 19, she was told she'd never get pregnant because she had PCOS. Wow. And after I did their intake, I'm like, I don't know if you still have PCOS. Like, you've really changed your life and everything. And so I said, I think you guys can get pregnant. And so that was like the first thing of like shifting. Like, this doctor had told her she couldn't, and now this other doctor, me, is telling her she can. And then I think 2 weeks later, I saw her for a mind body appointment, and we tracked this something in her nervous system, this like fear of abandonment, that she like forgot this memory that her brothers took her out to the woods at 5 years old and left her there. And then her husband is a Marine and is constantly, so there's this like fear of abandonment that's getting triggered daily.
All the time. Yeah.
So we went back to that original memory and did some processing around that. Yeah. And she, even before I got her labs back, they literally were pregnant her next ovulation.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, there's that, like, not that it was a big T trauma, but there's like the trauma piece that you talked about, and how like that's so connected to everything that plays out in our current adult lives. So something that may have happened to you as a child, it might have been a small thing, right? Like, or not necessarily small, but not a major, like a big T trauma. Even those little T traumas can add up and can like rewire your nervous system in a way that can keep you in that stress state.
Totally. And that's the thing that not the thing, but one of the things that I see is like the hugest for women with fertility is that like you have to feel safe.
Yes.
You have to feel safe in your body. You have to feel safe emotionally. You have to feel safe in your relationship with your partner. And so I'll often do like kind of like a safety inventory when I bring on a new couple. And I prefer to work with the couple. Unless somebody's going through an egg freezing or doing it on their own with like a sperm donor, which I'm totally happy to support. But if the partner is involved, the partner has to be involved.
Yes. Oh, totally. Because it's such a crucial part of the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'll do like a safety inventory. And then oftentimes I'll also do like, I do a very extensive like intake. And we'll talk about like childhood stuff and relationship to mom and dad and thoughts about motherhood, fears, all of that. And I have them kind of rate the charge in their body, like a subjective unit of discomfort. And then whatever has the highest SUD scores, then we start there. And then I have a number of different techniques that I use, sometimes, virtually, sometimes in person, sometimes I refer out for things. But just getting the safety in their system and helping their nervous system relax and reprogramming those thoughts. So instead of, oh my God, I'm running out of time, shifting that to, I take amazing care of myself. Every day I'm getting younger and more fertile. And really getting them to a place where you have to believe it. Yeah. So that might not be where we start. It might be like, today I'm taking great care of myself. Like that might be like, it has to feel true in the body. Like you can't just like,
you can't totally
rose water
fake it till you make it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like spray rose water on a poo pile. Like, yes. I can't remember who I heard that from, but like, we can't do that.
That's a good one. I like that one. Yeah. I love that you do that though. I think that's a really missing component to a lot of fertility treatment, even in the alternative world. It's like checking in on like, hey, wait, how charged do you feel about, because our thoughts could be such a trigger for the fight flight response. And I always have this saying that you're either making sex hormones or you're making stress hormones. Your body doesn't really like to make both. So if you're making stress hormones because you have a thought process that you're not going to be a good mother or whatever that, that is, it's going to be difficult for the body to be in that really fertile place where you're making ample amounts of sex hormones to carry a baby.
Totally. I have one patient who had come to me for egg freezing at 40. And she came to me with like 8 weeks before she was starting like the round, which is half of what I would normally want to do. But she's like, I already paid for it. This is what we're doing. I'm like, okay, this is what we're working with. And she had already been on supplements, had been taking good care of herself, but we had quite a bit of mind body work to do. And she had never been pregnant before. And she's like, I mean, with all the fun I've had, I'm a little shocked I've never accidentally gotten pregnant. And so I really think I have fertility issues. And she was 40. So she's like hearing the narrative and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think they had predicted that she would get, like maybe 6 eggs or something. Well, she got 12 eggs.
Wow.
And then a couple months later, accidentally got pregnant. without going through. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And a lot of the mind body stuff was like fear of being a bad mom, fear of like not being able to have kids because of her age.
Yeah.
It was just literally, we're just knocking fears off the list as we were going through our sessions.
It's really cool. I love that you're doing that. So what else? So the mind body stuff. So that's a good place to start. Any other like big ones?
I mean, sleep and nutrition.
Yeah.
Like sleep is so vital. Like, for example, like we've all heard of melatonin.
Yes.
We know we need it to fall asleep, and it's also a very powerful antioxidant in the brain, but also in the ovaries. So there's actually melatonin in the follicular fluid, and there's also more mitochondria per like density in the ovaries than anywhere else in the body as well. So these light and circadian and sleep wake cycles are super important for the ovaries. And so like some of the things I recommend are pitch black bedroom, no screens 2 hours before, sunlight in your eyes first thing in the morning, colder bedroom. So like some of the basic sleep hygiene things.
Yeah.
So that we know that you're getting that good melatonin production, both for like the brain and restoration, but also for those ovaries and egg quality.
Yeah.
Because you can take melatonin, but like I think your own endogenous anything, if we can
better.
get that, is gonna be better.
Oh yeah.
And then also growth hormone is secreted while we sleep, and that's also very anti-aging for the ovaries and everything else. And so getting good deep sleep specifically when that growth hormone is pulsing is super important for maintaining and prolonging healthy fertility. And also like if you do need to rewind the clock, you have to have the sleep.
You gotta have the sleep. Yeah.
Gotta have the sleep.
Well, and I like what you said, the sleep hygiene, like some of those practices, they're so simple, but sometimes they are, sometimes we're like, oh no, it's okay. I'll look at my phone before bed, or no, it's okay. I won't keep the room really cold. Or, we sometimes like make these small decisions that affect our sleep, but over time, those small, that, oh, I'm going to go to bed at 11 instead of 10, maybe you got something done, but getting that hour of sleep, those hours before midnight are so golden for, right? Like, I feel like the hours before midnight are so much more restorative than don't you produce more melatonin in those couple of hours before? I don't know.
More melatonin, more growth hormone. Like most of your growth hormone is secreted between 10 p.m. and midnight.
Yeah. So those going to bed at 10 is such a good, or even if you can go to bed at 9, 9's a little trickier, but 10, if you can go to bed at 10, it's like the golden magic hour.
Totally.
So then nutrition, let's talk a little bit about nutrition. Like what are your favorite things to like tell someone they should be eating to get, to improve egg quality? I know there's like the egg quality diet out there, and I've had a couple people come in and ask about that.
If I had to give like 2 recommendations, one would be all the colors.
Yes. I love it.
So like as many colors as you can get in a day of mostly vegetables and fruit.
Yes.
And then the second would be grass-fed liver, which, my plant-based people hate.
Yeah. I don't want to do that.
And won't do, which is totally fine. Like you can do everything else.
Yeah.
But grass-fed beef liver has been one of those things that like has shown in the research, specifically in Dr. Kara Fitzgerald's study, to actively rewind the biological clock. And I also won't eat grass-fed beef liver, but there's hacks for everything.
So what's your favorite hack for that?
So my favorite hack is a product called Pluck, because there's also supplements out there, but I already take a handful of pills. Like I'd rather eat what I can. So it's a seasoning called Pluck, and it's herbs and spices, which are also great for fertility, like rosemary, garlic, with dehydrated organ meats.
Oh,
so
perfect.
It tastes like a seasoning, and you get all the benefit of the organ meats. Yeah.
Great. Oh, that's awesome. All right.
And it's delicious.
Yeah.
It's delicious. Yep.
Oh, well, that's a win.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Everyone go check out Pluck.
Yeah. Literally veggies, meat, salad, I have a patient who will mix it into Greek yogurt and make like a French onion dip with it.
Oh, that sounds kind of good.
Yeah.
So just put it on all the things.
Put it on all the things.
So put it on all the colorful things. Put the plus on all the colorful ththings. Or go eat grass-fed beef liver. Right?
Yeah, totally.
Or go do that. Well, this has been awesome. Is there anything else you want to chat about or share about?
I mean, I would just say like there's so much hope right now. Like the narrative out there is truly that like your fertility falls off a cliff at 35. And that's not the case.
I hate that narrative. Case. Yeah.
And so at Clockwize, we are actively working to, one, change the narrative, but two, give women the ability to test, to rewind, and just all the resources to be able to have healthy babies on our timeline. Because I do think it's a beautiful thing that women are waiting longer. We're more emotionally stable. Yeah. We're more financially stable. We're more relationship stable.
Yeah.
And so now, like, my mission is really to figure out how do we create more biologically stable bodies to be able to benefit from all these other benefits of waiting.
Well, thank you so much for doing your work. It's amazing. I'm so glad I had the pleasure of meeting you, and thank you so much for being on the show. And everyone, we'll put all her links in the show notes. You can go check her out and order the test kits and work with her if you want to. And this was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Kinney. Such a pleasure.
Bye, guys. See you next week.
Thank you for tuning in today. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to connect with me on social media and leave a rating and/or a review. This helps grow the show so more people have access to this knowledge that leads to empowered healing. Love and light, and see you next week.